Carnival Personnel was recorded in a dank, moldy basement.
Joe and Jacques, it's Carnival Personnel. Joe and Jacques, to their wives this show is their personal hell. Well, the show sounds the same every single week. Pats are great, Trump is lame, and Joe barely speaks. Who you think still listening?
Who you think still listening?
Besides Jim and Biff, yeah.
And don't forget Richard.
Here's a random review. No one cares about you two, Joe and Jacques.
Joe and Jacques, Joe and Jacques, Joe and Jacques.
Yeah! Thank you! No, I'm a Caputo. I am from a very small town in New Jersey. My town is so... Jersey? Jersey? Who's Jersey? Jersey City? All right, well, we'll talk. I'm not that kind of Jersey. Anyway, my town is so small and so Italian it should be a meatball. But I didn't fit in. I was different than the other kids. I got picked on a lot. Because even though my dad was Italian, my mom was from Canada. So I grew up saying some pretty weird shit. Like, how you doing? Eh? You guys want to go oot and a boot? I'd kick a kid's ass and I'd be like, I'm sorry. It was like being bipolar, right? Like you know what it's like to be the polite kid in New Jersey? It's lonely. Okay?
Hello, and welcome to Carnival Personnel Sideshow. I'm Jacques.
I'm Joe.
And Joe, as you know, my trip to the homeland was a wild success. And of all the fun and awesome mics I got to do, the first night, the second night I actually landed, got there Thursday, but with Saturday night, I got to do the showcase, which we've already talked about on last week's episode, so I won't bore everybody with, but it was at Tao Comedy. And the highlight of that was just a lineup of people who made me laugh from start to finish, starting with the guy, Chris and Bobby own the place. Chris hosted the show. Bobby Oliver went up, midway through the show. It was great. But I met a bunch of comics while I was out there who really made me laugh. And some of them are actually willing to come and talk to us about the comedy scene and their stuff. So I won't keep babbling and do my 20-minute intros like I sometimes do that you admonish. So let's just say hello to Lauren. Yeah, I see now I'm even looking at it phonetically. Don't help because I won't learn if I don't fall down. Caputo.
Close.
Almost.
You know what? I'm going to take it. Do you ever watch Orange Is the New Black?
Yes.
Did you ever watch that? Okay. Do you know the cop, the warden in there?
Yes.
Caputo.
Caputo.
Joe Caputo. Yes.
And I should. I was close.
I could be related. I don't know, but you were very close, and you get a sticker. You just for your efforts.
So we'll get right into it. Lauren, how long have you been doing this crazy stuff?
It's really funny. Like I call it like dipping my toe in and out for like 10 years. And the reason is because, with comedy, when you start out, you have to start out. It's a lot of grunt work. You got to do a lot of mics. You got to do a lot of shows. And I had that going on, and then I had a wife going on, being like, "So, can you make some money, please, or something?" So, so I've been doing it for a while, actually, but I just started to kind of insert myself again to get really going. At COVID, I actually stopped doing it for a while because the Zoom stuff for me, I was just like, I do this at work all day. Like, I don't want to Zoom comedy, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, 10 years about on and off.
And when you started, where did you start? Where is home? Home is not Los Angeles, I assume, for anybody.
Well, I mean, now it is for me, but we're very transient. So I started in San Francisco, and I had a great teacher. His name is Curtis. He teaches at the SF Comedy College, and I it's so funny because it's like you don't really realize like the anatomy of a joke. I just thought I was funny, right? So I learned from him. I did comedy in a basement of an Irish pub, and it was amazing because, in the beginning, if people come or not, you're down in the basement on the way to the bathroom. And sometimes we would just have people because, the Giants were on upstairs. And they would just come to the bathroom and they would laugh and then they would go to the bathroom and then leave. So, but it was great. It was really fun. It was a great supportive group. So yeah, I started in San Francisco actually.
And is that where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Jersey. So, we're talking about being Italian. Like my town is so Italian. Like,
how Italian is it?
It should be a meatball. Like I'm 5'4" and I'm considered very tall. So it's very, there's a lot of Caputos in my town. Like you would go and say, oh, do you know Caputo? They would know.
So you've only been on 3 episodes of The Sopranos, right?
There actually was a Caputo who died in The Sopranos. And of course, like, I mean, you guys call it The Sopranos. I call it home movies. You know what I mean? It's very familiar. And I'm just like, I know those guys with no necks.
Well, it's funny. We were talking about all this stuff before about the woman who, married, my uncle married. And again, he got married late in life. I didn't put the pieces together, so my mom and her family is just, where all the other nations of like Northern Europe, like, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, England, the same island, but just variations. But I wasn't smart enough to put the pieces together till I was like 10, 11. To about 10 or 11, I kind of started to figure it out. But every other weekend, I went to my uncle's house. His very Italian wife would just make tons of food. And the phone would ring Sunday morning nonstop right until the football was kicked. And then nothing until about the fourth quarter, the start of the fourth quarter. And then it would ring off the hook until the ball was kicked. And then we spent Sunday night driving around Everett and Revere and these cities, just outside of Boston. He was a middleman for a bookie, and he was a very, 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 he was the guy who went and collected. And and he had the car.
I don't understand where you're going with this because we're talking about Italian people, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, we don't do that. I don't understand.
No. So
what does one have to do with the other? You just made a gigantic leap.
No. I'm just talking about what a sports fan my uncle was, and he just wanted to go because back then there wasn't cell phones, so he just wanted to go and make sure his buddies had seen all the same highlights that he did that night. So
absolutely, and make sure they were financially well off.
Yes.
I grew up Italian adjacent, and my best friend growing up next door was Italian. And then, I also say to people now that I'm Jewish adjacent because my wife has been the longtime nanny. We're talking like many, many years for 3 different Jewish families raising their kids, so I have no culture of myself, but I've tangentially, and then, I have a Portuguese friend who I do a podcast with.
Oh yes, yeah. I've been mistaken for Italian. Like what are you?
Yeah. You look a little dark. You could pass. You're passing.
Exactly. I'm Mediterranean. I'm close enough.
But, yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, honestly, nobody would. If you just say you're Italian would be like, all right, and you're in. That's it.
So you grew up in New Jersey, and so at what point do you get out to California, and what made you say one day, I can do that?
What's crazy? So I actually, and this is when my dad refers to the time I ran away from home. I went to college. I went to Arizona. I actually went to Arizona. Arizona. I think it was the furthest I could go where my parents were like, I'm not paying California prices. So I went to Arizona. I met my wife. She moved to San Francisco, and then I followed her. But she knew I wasn't stalking her.
Okay, thank you. I'm writing that down. Just clarification. Yeah. Okay.
She was aware that I was coming, and then I just was like, by trade, I do learning and development, so I was doing training, like corporate training, and I realized care if people learned anything or not. I liked when they laughed at my jokes. Like, that's why I liked it. Like, I didn't like, I'm like, at the end, you know, they're like, what did you learn? And I'm like, oh, I don't give a shit. But how did you think my joke landed? Was it good? So I was like, well, maybe now that I'm becoming, you know, middle aged and that crisis kind of creeps in, you know, it's like, let's see what this is about. So like I said, I had a lot of fun doing it in San Francisco and the city and stuff like that. So, but yeah, and then I just, you know, then we moved down here to kind of make it a thing, like have a go at it, like for real. And it's crazy down here, but I'm enjoying it because I like it. It's like the high you get. Like there's no other feeling than making I mean, you guys know, right? Like you make somebody you get that laugh. It's better than anything on the planet.
Did you do any open mics before you took the class, or did you say, let me learn this and then go out and try it?
Well, I grew up from teachers. So again, I think I went to school.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I learned how to write a joke, and then I did mics, and then I was like, okay, let's see how this lands. And the funny thing is that one, a joke wasn't what I thought it was, first of all. But the second thing that I kind of learned is to mostly be present and to trust my instincts. You know what I mean? A little bit more. Like, you know, I was taught, like, doesn't even matter if you forget the punchline, as long as you're present, everything else you can make something happen.
Right.
If that makes sense.
And were there any people along the way that like I guess is inspire the right word? Were there any comedians that you really like that you thought, I kind of having a similar cadence, or I kind of like that, you know, or just somebody that you're like, you know what, I want to do that kind of comedy?
Yeah, if I could be Michelle Wolf, I would be Michelle Wolf. Michelle Wolf, did you ever hear her seal bit?
Yes.
That she does? I could watch that 12 times and I just die. I think she's so clever. Also, like I do love, like, you know, of course, like the Amy Poehler's, Tina Fey's, you know, out there, but I like that smart kind of flip it, like test your assumptions kind of comedy a little bit. And I also really enjoy watching, well, Ali Wong is hilarious to me, and also Fortune Feimster. I actually saw Fortune Feimster in San Francisco before she was famous. I got a picture with her, me and my wife. We got a picture with her. This is right when she was still in Chesley Handlers. It was a little club. It wasn't even anything. And like now I watch like Salty and Sweet and I just die. Like I feel, yeah, that's kind of like my brand. But Michelle Wolf I think she's hilarious.
Have you ever been drawn to sketch comedy at all, or improv or anything like that, or is it strictly stand-up?
I suck at improv, probably because I don't like to share. But I did do improv. I've done improv both in Long Beach and I've done it in LA. And one time I was actually auditioning to, you know, you have to go up in levels in improv. And the thing that they tell you is don't kill a dog. That's what, like, you can't do certain things like in improv, and killing a dog is one of them. And I went on stage and I killed a dog and I got booed. Like literally the whole place booed me. I'm just not that, when people do improv, like they're smarter than me. Like, I'll just say that. Like I know what I'm going to say when I go on stage, and you know, you just play with the flow, and it's just me. But yeah, improv is, I have a lot of respect for people that can do that.
Yeah, I tried improv way back, and I took an improv class, and I think I was more no but than yes and. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. You're like actually making the scene not happen.
Right.
You're like, how can we dismantle this scene?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like Jacques, I'm like the guy who goes, no. Oh, the last name of the first baseman is what? His name is James What? And or you know who
Oh, I see the confusion.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
I see the confusion. Yeah, I'm that guy.
Yeah. Oh man. No, that's and so. How long were you doing in San Francisco? And were you getting like showcases? Were you getting like book things, or what made you say, okay, there's a good scene here now, but I got what it takes to really go where you have to go.
That's a good question. I mean, like it was more showcases and things like that. Like I wasn't getting booked. And I kind of thought like, I always, from a child, the best day of my life was when my dad brought home my VCR. And it was during Easter and everybody was at my house eating Easter eggs. And I wasn't finding Easter eggs with the other children. I was inside because my dad brought home The Last Unicorn and I had to watch it. So I've always been drawn to Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I don't think it was like I have enough chops to come to LA. It was more of like, San Francisco is a smaller scene with comedy, and I loved it there, but we just wanted to try something different and kind of like, okay, let's see where this takes us.
And your wife was like, yeah, let's do this.
She did.
That's
Because
great.
yeah, she actually was like, I don't think so. Like when we got here, she's like, I don't like LA. And now she's such a Kings fan that we have to live within a certain proximity to crypto. So, I don't think we're ever leaving LA. Like even if I don't make it or not.
I will not go down into the rabbit hole of the LA Kings, but yes, that's the only team I adopted while I was out there. Our other co-host of the other co-host of this, my buddy Biff, who's been my goalie on the same team in LA since like 96, 97. I'll just tell you this one quick story. One of my best friends was the first stick boy of the Kings in 1966. He's a partner. And he came to the show that we did at Tao. He's been my defensive partner literally for almost 30 years. And he's a couple years older than me. And Biff, on my birthday, June 11th, 2012, called and said, do you want to go to the game tonight? And I'm like, and John had season tickets and we went, but Biff and I were in the building when the Kings won their first cup in 2012. It was one of the greatest. It was like probably 7 or 8 of my like 14-person hockey team was there. So yeah, so the Kings are the one team, and that that I love. Did she come from a hockey family or from the
This was me because I grew up with Flyers, right? Like we went, to the Flyers game. My dad used to take us to the Flyers game, but I couldn't get up. You know how like in intermission you get up, you get candy, whatever. My dad was like, sit down. You're going to sit down throughout the whole thing. And I was like, Jesus, I got to pee. But anyway, it was COVID and there was like nothing on. And I'm like, oh, like, I think you'll like hockey. Let's try hockey. And now she's obsessed.
That's great.
I'm gonna go tell her that about the stick boy that came to the. Gonna be like, oh my God, who is it? And try to find it.
If I can find the picture, I'll post it when I post this. So when they won the cup in 2012, when the first game of the 2012-2013 season, they had a big presentation over at LA Live where the cup was and everything. My buddy and the other stick boy from 1966 carried the cup from LA Live across the street, and they handed it to Robitaille, and I forget who was the owner. And it's like yes, so and then. And Joe knows this, and so for it's well beyond before you got into it, but we moved out of LA in 2014. But from about 2006 to 2014, every Tuesday morning, I played at El Segundo, where the Kings practice rink is, with a bunch of ex-Kings like Marty McSorley and Kopitar's brother and dad played. His dad, which it's funny because his dad I think is 2 years older than me. And it's like, yeah, he could probably play AA hockey here at that point. Like dad was good. Like, because Kopi at the time was like 22, 23. So dad was only 42, and just, anyway, sorry about a sidebar. So the wife was supportive. She comes down. And what was the game plan when you got to town? I'm just going to hit every mic. Did you have any contacts in the community?
No, I didn't. So I was like, okay, how do I start? So I always go back to, okay, I got to go back to the basics, right? Because So we came down. We actually lived in Long Beach. We didn't know what we were doing. We just picked a place to live in Long Beach, and I thought like, oh, I could drive to LA. That didn't last very long, by the way. Now I live in LA. But I actually started at Flappers again. So I actually went back, do a couple sessions, did a couple of showcases at Flappers, started getting booked at Flappers, kind of tightening up my set, right? Like, and being like, okay, what's working, what's not from the bookings I was getting at Flappers. And then I was like, you know what? I think it's now time. And I just started, calling bookers. And it was crazy. Like, I went from like this insecurity of like, oh my gosh, am I good enough to like branch outside of, because Flappers is a pretty developmental club, right? Like it's, they do a lot of, it's kind of like Tao Comedy, right? Like they do a lot of showcases, they do a lot of, beginning comics. I was like, and I finally, right before COVID hit, I was like, okay, it's time to branch off. I have a tight set. Now I can move on. And then COVID hit, and I was like, I stopped because I'm like, I like the crowd. Like I like the energy. I like I'm not messing with people, but I like interacting with people, doing the crowd work and stuff like that. So when COVID started dying down, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start. I actually looked at a couple of comedians that I had met. I did the Burbank Comedy Festival in 2018. I got Best of the Fest.
Oh,
and then
that's huge.
Oh, thanks. I'm doing it again this year. And I'm doing NoHo. In fact, next weekend they're overlapping. That's going to be a fun drive for me. But anyway, so I started following, comedians that I met, and they're really nice and they talk to me and stuff. And I'm like, okay, Peter's performing at this club. Peter and I did some comedy with him. I think, we can be on the same level. Like, I'm like, I feel comfortable. Let me call that booker. Right. And then that's how I started building out like different clubs to start performing at. And then, now and now like submitting to more festivals and things like that. I did Palm Springs when it was virtual. But I'm doing NoHo and Flappers. Again, I didn't really get into the when comedy was on Zoom, I was kind of like, I'm just gonna take a break because I don't know. It just wasn't for me. But anyway, but yeah, that was my strategy. I just started following people and watching what they were doing and how they were growing their careers. And I'm like, okay, I this sounds crass, but I'm like, okay, I'm as funny as that person. I think I can hold my own. Like, you know what I mean? Because sometimes if you go, one time actually at Flappers, I went right after Whitney Cummings, and I forgot my set because I went right after Whitney Cummings and she nailed it. And then so as the comedian, you go up and you're like, oh, I'm not that good. So, yeah.
No, that's one of those things. In Boston, you hear that, and it happens in LA all the time. Some big name will just drop into a place because they're working something out, and no one's going to say, no, you can't go right up. And then there's so many people I've talked to who've been like, yeah, I'm not following that. I'm good. When the two people I saw before that person went up, I'm like, oh yeah. I'm as good. I might even be better than those guys. But then somebody like that comes in, and it's like,
now, see, you guys have got the wrong attitude. If it were me, I'd have such bad material and I'd have such low confidence in myself. I'm like, yes, now I can finally just bomb. Like I can bomb, I can be. There's no way I'm gonna follow, Dave Chappelle or Whitney Cummings or somebody like that. Yeah. Now I can just bomb, and then I can just blame them. It's like, well, I had to follow, Whitney Cummings for crying out loud.
Yeah, I kind of did do that. I actually said, I just forgot my set, you guys, and my set was about being on a diet. I said, I'm such on a diet right now that I forgot my set, and that actually got a laugh, but it was mostly because I was like, how do I do that? How do I find again? She was doing a Netflix special and she was working on her stuff, but that does happen in LA. I've seen Tiffany Haddish just coming in and working. One time I was bumped so far down the lineup that it was like 10:30 and the show was supposed to end. People had been leaving, so I actually got up in that show and I just said whatever I wanted. I just didn't even care. I didn't even care about my set at that time. I was just like, is there anybody else here? And we'll just go from there.
So let's talk a little bit about your style and stuff, which I enjoyed immensely. And it's funny because when I invited you today and I went back, I'm like, because I met so many comics, and when I saw the note, it's like my wife would have loved you. I'm like, yes, okay, now I remember like what the set was. And I think you had a dishwasher joke that that I had, Joe. I had that on my set list, and I'm like, it's completely different, but how many dishwasher? Yeah. But you have so much material, and that's something that sometimes, like, I try to work out. That I'm in a room. I've been married for 20 years, and there's so many times I'm in a room with comics who are barely 20, or people who are barely 20, and it's like, how does this resonate? But your stuff was so relatable. I mean, that you really killed it, and I really got all the relationship jokes. I mean, it doesn't matter, if it's what kind of relationships after a certain amount of time, it doesn't matter. They're all the fucking same.
Yep. And I think like that's kind of like my POV, right? I like to play with stereotypes and like flip them on its head, right? Because I just noticed interesting things, when I was coming out. Like I'm actually working on a set right now, thinking about like making fun of straight people and having like straight people feel like we feel like when we have to come out to them all the time. But that's kind of my point of view, because it's like, I also like, throughout just my life. And I think like, I get what you're saying. Like, you're like, oh my God, did you graduate high school and you're out here? And I'm like starting comedy in like my 40s. Like, but I think at the same time, it enabled me to have like the life experience that makes it relevant, because I just, my friends and family are always like, and it came from true life. Like people were like, oh my God, you're so lucky to be in a same-sex relationship. I'm like, well, I suck at it. So like, is there something wrong with me? Because I suck. Like you could ask my wife, like she was like, like you don't know how to do the things that I guess women should do. So I love playing with that idea, because it's like this whole thing that people have these assumptions, and they're just not true either. Like I suck as a spouse, and it doesn't matter my gender. Like I'm just a bad spouse, and that's just it, period.
No, I think that's why your comedy, when I was sitting there, it's like, oh my God, because I'm not a car guy. I don't fix it. Like so many people assume, I'm a big guy, I was an athlete and all this stuff, but people must assume, oh, I'm your typical dad who fixes things when they break,
right.
or knows how things work, which I know nothing of that,
Right. I'm good at fixing things until they break. So like,
well, it's Joe will come over, like, Joe and I's relationship is great. Every time my wife travels for work, and she travels around the world following Duran Duran, and I'm not kidding. And every time she comes over, Joe comes over, and we watch movies and TV shows from the 70s to like 3 a.m. But Joe will walk in the house and he'll get upset because this thing is still broke from the last time he was over, and it'd be like, you didn't fix. Well, and he has just fixed things before because it bothers him that how do you put up with this being like that? And I'm like, I don't have that chip.
Low standards. Right. I learned low standards.
Well, you know what? I think everybody should have those low standards, and then you're just surprised. You know what I mean? Like if you don't expect your partner to be competent, and then when they do something, you're like, oh, okay. Then there you go. That's the thing. But yeah.
But that's why your humor really spoke to me, because it was about being in a relationship and being bad at the stuff that people assume you're supposed to be good at. And it killed. It absolutely killed.
Oh, thank you. I have fun with it too, because where I also like I'm thinking about playing with a set around like, because for gay people we have to all the time, and straight people's reactions are just so fun, because it's kind of like this anxiety that people have too, and they don't know what to say and what to do, and I just I just like people again, assumptions, people's reactions, and it's kind of like, man, like that's not it. Like, I don't know why you think that. I don't know why you think that. I don't know why you think that I know how to do laundry, because I just don't. Anyway.
No, and it's funny because, and that's that's how we have raised our sons. We have just a lot of people from the different communities. We moved back here. My wife is, like my Hyundai Santa Fe was made in Korea. Dad was from Boston. Mom was from Korea. We lived in a very diverse neighborhood in LA. We lived in the country of Qatar where, it was just great for a lot of reasons. But when we moved back here, the town my brother and sister live in, everybody looks like me. Well, not this good, but it's you're either white or translucent. And we wanted to be in a place. And, there's just so many people in my wife and my life's world that come from the different communities. And that's something that we've always, kind of talked with the boys with and stuff like this. It's like, and Joe and I always joke about it. It's like, so when did you choose to be straight? Just conversations that I never had to, worry if my grandmother was going to love me. Well, I did, especially with my mom. My mom really likes the girl I went out with 2 girls ago. She hates no girls are good enough for me because, she's right. Let's be honest.
Listen, just the Batman shirt alone. That's the standard.
And so, but those are the things. So when your humor does that, and it's great because you had so many of these misdirections where you're like, and then again, I don't want to bring up any of the topics of the stuff you're doing, but you walk people down the street.
Yeah.
And you play on the assumption that they're going, because you gave this much of the math problem and then that much of the math problem, and what they're going to assume is the answer, but just at the last minute you throw in one more variable and it takes you for that side loop. So that was that was a really fun night. And so are you one of these, this is my 1 year, my 2 year plan?
I just wrote, it's funny that you said that. I just literally wrote out not years, but milestones, right? So I kind of painted a vision of, what I want to achieve monetarily, and then the milestones to kind of get there. And for me, stand-up comedy is not the only thing I'm interested in. I'm also interested in, of course, writing. I feel like when you're in LA, like everybody's got a screenplay, and everybody is an actor, it's not just a comedian. So, but yeah, I did. And I didn't do that for a long time. And I think it's because I really understand what you're saying when you're talking about the age, right? So when I first started, I was like, I am so much older than these young motherfuckers. And I actually, when we first moved here, I did a variation of my set down in the OC, and it did not. Lesbian jokes just don't go over in the OC. I'll just tell you that.
What?
Yeah, I swear to God. And then so I was just like, oh crap. So I didn't really put any kind of goals in place because I was like, I don't know if I'm good at this yet. I didn't really start feeling like, okay, maybe I can actually do this. Maybe this is something that I am good at until I would say the last year, which is crazy, right? And I think, because I don't know about other comedians, but you just don't know. And it's you find out if you're good or not in real time. You know what I mean? And you have to go and adjust and be resilient enough to keep going. But this is I'm telling you, this is the first year that I'm like, yeah, I could do this. I can go, because Tao was my first 15-minute set, actually. I'm like, okay, I can do that now. I can go and headline and book and you know what I'm saying, and travel and do all those things. But yeah, I did do the milestones. And I work towards it every day. I have these little incremental goals, right? Because if you don't, I lost 7 years to just oh shit, I need a job. And then you work at your job and then you're like, God, that commute was really tiring. I'm just gonna go and, watch Love is Blind and pass out in front of the TV, right? But because you just get lost in not the stuff you want to do, but the stuff you have to do, right? Isn't that a John Lennon quote or something like that? Life happens while you're making other plans or something.
I don't know whose that thing is, but right, that one, it's like, life gets in the way of the things you want to do, and it's all true.
I am reminded of the Onion headline, "Day job officially becomes job."
Exactly.
Oh, I hate the Onion so much. Because they're always right. Like it's like, damn it.
Yeah.
No, it's and how often do you will you hang that list on a wall till you're reminded, or will you in 6 months relook at the list, or once you write it down, you're like, okay, it's in my head. This is what I'm going to do over the next.
I do like 90-day goals, like 90 days. Like it's almost like I'm treating it like my job, right? Like, you know what I mean? I'm treating it like, when you're at your job, right? Like your corporate job, you have goals and you have whatever. I'm shifting my perspective to treat it like if it were like time for me to eat, like how do I eat? You know what I'm saying? Like how do I forage? How do I fend for myself? So I do the 30-day goals, but I just recently, I wasn't really hitting the 30-day goal. I'm sorry, 90-day goals. I was kind of like, kind of not. And then I was like, okay, no, I got to get more specific on them. But yeah, I look at them every day. Like,
That's
and
great.
I started, and I swim, and a lot of sets come to me while I swim. It's very weird. Like I'll be trying to work out a joke and I'm like, it's just not that funny. And of course I tell jokes to my wife and none of them are funny to my wife, by the way. She'll always be like,
Okay, so that's not a gay straight thing. That's a comedian, not comedian thing. Okay.
That's a married thing.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a married thing because she's like, you know what, honey, why don't you start surprising me on stage? This is what she's starting to do. Oh man, that's because, like when you first write a joke, it's not good. It sucks. And that's the other thing you have, like, again, it took me 7 years to get comfortable with sucking. Does that make sense? Like you have to be okay with sucking. Stand up. If you're not okay with sucking, you should not be a stand-up comedian. So, but anyway, so I think about it while I'm swimming in the pool. I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place.
No.
I look, every day, I look at my vision, like I have like a monetary vision of what I want. And I have a phrase, a little catchphrase that I've created for it. And I say it to myself all the time.
No, I always like to ask people because what can I learn from these conversations? Because I'm a selfish prick. I like other comedians coming on, so I became like, I got to do that. But I do. I if I don't set goals, because there's nothing to set goals for. There's if you don't set. So 2 years ago, I wrote a script. I hadn't done one in a while, and I arbitrarily said I got to be done on my birthday. I have the writer's draft, and I had like 4 or 5, and I had it kicking around in my head forever. And then it wasn't like a New Year's resolution as much as I want to do this by this time. And I got a little fanatical. But if I didn't hold myself accountable, nobody else will. So that's why it was great to hear that you readjust the 90-day. Now, when you're in the pool swimming and you get a joke, do you get out of the pool or do you just keep working it?
No, I actually keep telling it to myself. And I don't know, like it might be that part of my OCD. Like, I don't know, like I keep repeating it. Or I keep being like, does it sound right? Does it sound right? But I'm telling, like, there's something about, for me, swimming that clears everything. Because first of all, when you're swimming, you have to think about surviving. Like you have to be present, right? You can't think about like all the other crap. Is this good? Is this bad? And it just allows your creativity to kind of flow through you. But no, I don't get out. I just keep thinking through my set. And then all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, I just swam for 30 minutes. Now, during those 30 minutes, every old person at the Y has lapped me and is swimming faster than me. But I still, I find it meditative, if that makes sense, because like, I don't know if this is for you, like when you're in your writing phase, like it's like, I'm cranky, I'm terrible. Like, I don't want to really write stuff down. Everything sucks. But then when I just get out of my own way, like, it's almost like something comes through, if that makes sense.
No, I love the process. I get ideas different times and I write them down and I usually think right away they're really great. And then I run it by Joe and he reminds me, nope,
Right. I'm
No.
like, yeah, I'm your
Yeah.
comedy wife, basically. Like,
Ex-
nah, no.
Yeah.
Maybe you should give up and quit.
You want to know something funny? That last joke I said at Tao, my wife told me, do not do the Care Bear joke. Do
Oh,
not do the Care Bear joke. And when I did it and nobody laughed, and I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, you guys, like, and that's the other thing that I have learned over my time in comedy. You got to use the moments. Every moment is a moment to make a laugh. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I pressed on your precious Care Bears. And literally, as soon as we got in the car, my wife was like, I told you not to do that joke. And you did the joke, and nobody laughed at you. It was dead silent. She was like, honey, you were great up until the Care Bear joke that I told you not to tell. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there's
I was like,
nothing
no.
worse than them being right. Like literally.
Here's what I said. I said, honey, it just needs to be reworked. And I'm going to keep it because she will not be right. Not in my house anymore. I'm kidding.
It's funny because when I started to get ready to do this, I started over Zoom, like over the pandemic. It's like, you know what? I haven't done this in 30 years. I'm going to, and I made Joe help me do it. So if honestly, if you accidentally laughed at something I said that night, 90% chance either Joe wrote it or punched it up to make it funny. But I did it, and then finally I did a Zoom show, and my wife said, "Can I sit in it?" It's the first time, and as soon as I was done, her big thing was like, "You didn't mention me or my mom. We moved back from the Middle East to take care of my mom-in-law, and it was hard, but it was great. And my mom-in-law was just a walking character, and it was and." Her boyfriend of 30 years who lived with us spoke zero English. So there was so much low hanging fruit right there. And
Right,
I did,
right.
but
And I
then
think zero Korean too, right? I don't think you spoke at all.
well, there is and that joke always lands. I have a whole 5-minute thing about, taking care of her and then him not speaking any English. We did figure out about a year in, after spending all this money on translation apps, he's illiterate in Korean, and yeah. And
Oh my God. That
so
is a punchline right there.
he's illiterate in two, like, the whole joke goes, it's like, and then the day he's glaring at the Korean newspaper without turning a page. And I look to my wife and she says, yes, he's holding it upside down. That's when we realized he was illiterate in 2 languages. But she's like, you didn't put this in. Flash forward, like, and Joe went to, she's only seen me 3 times because I won't let her go to anything but really nice book shows, because out here, it's the open mics and stuff like that. And there was a little bit of this in LA. I went to a bunch of places. There was a little bit, but out here there's so much Proud Boy-ish kind of punching down. It's like, I'm a comedian, so I'm gonna go against it. It's like using the F word, not fuck, using the R word, being anti-woke is the new woke type stuff. I was like, yeah, I'm not subjecting her, I mean, to that. But when I did do a show and I had this one bit, and in my whole head, I'm like, oh, she might love or hate this because I didn't run it by her. And it's true. It's like, and Joe, it's a whole joke about being on a date and not know it. In LA, I owned a company, and my part of running the company was taking clients out to lunch, drinks after work,
yeah.
and taking people to the Kings game.
Yeah,
and,
you did that joke.
Yeah, that's really happened. And this girl a coworker, and it's like, and in my head, I'm like, oh man, because it was kind of, because I came home that night and said, by the way, I'm dating this person. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah, her coworker told me all that and stuff like that. And it was awkward to tell my wife. It's like, hey, honey, I just accidentally went on a date. Yeah. So 10 years later, I'm doing that joke, and she's like, oh, and she thought it was funny. And I was like, is this opening up am I going to have to go through that whole kind of, well, how did you not know she thought you liked her? It's like, I didn't know you liked me, and you lived with me for 6 months before I figured it out type thing. Have you had that with your wife where you've done a joke?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I try to run things by her first, because I was doing a show, I think it was like a month or 2 ago. And if it's about her, I run it by her, but I was doing a show and I was talking about, I was doing a Target joke because around 4th of July. And I was doing it was right around when, Target decides to pull the, for Pride. Right. Because my joke was about, and this happened, like kind of happened in real life. Like, I was like, it's so funny to me that they have the Pride stuff right by the 4th of July stuff. Like, that doesn't match. So I was doing this whole joke around it. And my wife was in the front row. And her face, like she made a face, and it threw me off. Like, I was just like, wait, what? Because she goes, I was afraid that you were going to say something really bad about white people. She was like, I was afraid of what you were going to say. So we have some of it, but so we've set boundaries. Like, for example, she can never sit in the front row, like ever again.
Yeah. Seeing your spouse in this front row make a face at a joke you're about to tell is like a comedy emergency break. Like, oh no.
Exactly.
Like, wait. Stop.
Yeah. And then and then after the show, she was like, you seemed really nervous. I'm like, sweetheart, that was because your face looked like she looked like she was going to cry. Like, she was like, oh shit, like she had an amygdala attack in my set. And I was like, oh, what am I gonna do? And am I gonna get in trouble? And do I have to sleep on the couch tonight? Like, what's happening? Yeah. But I do, if the jokes are about her specifically, I do kind of I do run them by her because she's like, people are going to think that I'm the worst wife on the planet. And I'm just like, that's not true. They already know that about
you. What's kind of helped me, and again, this is large part of Joe. It's I might have been a different comedian. Not that I am a comedian. Pre Time's Up and Move On. And what I try to do now, and I make a real effort, and I, like I said, I don't run by things by her, although she is, next to Joe, probably the funniest person in my life. It's like painfully hysterical, but they have just their senses of humor. But I've had some stuff where Joe's helped me turn it around and tell the exact same joke. And I might have done it that night. It's like when I talk about, they're only looking for what you're looking for, somebody to grow old with, somebody to build a life with, somebody to nag so much that they want to rip their ears off. Is it how I first had worked out the joke? But that's, women are like this, guys are like this. So I turned it around where, it's like, somebody who can relentlessly mansplain to them Star Wars, which made me the butt of the joke versus her the butt of the joke. And it's not even her. It's like a wife, a woman, a person in this position. And I've worked hard to, if I am going to have jokes about us, that I make it, okay, it's my not understanding or it's my inadequacies. Held up to the mirror that she's clearly the better, which is the truth. It's like, it amazes our sons because they just found out a little while ago, they just assumed we both went to college. She dropped out of college to take care of her dad. I only got to go to college because I could play hockey 2 years after. I flunked out of high school, played minor league hockey, and then went to college. And they're like, wait, you have a college degree, but mama has the really good job and is a smart one. It's like, how does that work out?
How that happened? That's funny.
And so I do. I don't run things by her as much as it's like, okay, how can I make sure that if she does come to a show and I mentioned some, but then it was funny because when I had added something about her mom, which was a good thing, which I forget what aside, because I absolutely. I love my mother-in-law so much. Our only sadness is the doctors gave us a 5 to 7 year window, and we lost her after 2 because we did such a bad job. But afterwards, she's like, oh, she had heard me do the routine before, but not that bit, and it just made her really emotional for her mom. It's like I wanted to laugh, but then all of a sudden I'm like, why am I crying? Everybody else is laughing, but they thought it was a joke. I know you were being so. It's interesting that you have that dynamic. And again, it's just so funny that I'm older than you, but we're in these long-term things. So your sense of humor and timing and stuff like that, I'm like, I wish she was here. And she was Zoomed, but the Zoom wasn't working that night.
Oh, so okay.
So I had
So
like
she missed the show?
she saw the whole thing, but the audio kept, and Chris kept saying, "Oh, we're trying to work on the audio and stuff like that." Did
Okay.
you? No, you don't like me, Joe, so you didn't zoom in.
No, I
But
hate
a bunch of people did, and they were like, they would get bits and pieces here, but I'm like,
Yeah.
because I had texted you, it's like, yeah, your whole thing, and I met your wife after, and it was great. Did you say that was your first 15-minute set
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
night?
Yeah.
I would have assumed that you have been doing 15-minute sets for absolutely in your sleep. It kind of felt like you had to cut down a 30-minute set to do that.
Well, I mean, I like to talk, so I could have probably kept going, but yeah, I think that, well, I was also a corporate trainer for 20 years. I mean, that's still technically my profession. So that comfortability in front of people, like I already had that walking in the door. But yeah, but going back to something that you said too, I mean, I now that you're talking about that, I think I also do that in my comedy too. Like I make myself, it's like my own point of view is like myself is the really terrible one, right? And it's like that you're so you can't really, you know, I don't want to say get in trouble with your spouse. Like I don't mean to sound like I don't get in trouble, but she will
We
come
get in
back and
trouble.
say
Don't
like,
worry.
yeah,
We're all
We
friends
get
here.
in
We get in
trouble.
trouble.
yeah, because but it's more of she'll come back and be like, that didn't work. I told you. I call her my wife-inger. And she'll be like, oh, you're gonna go up on set. She was like, I've heard these jokes a lot. I need to hear new material. She'll even like smack her hand. New material. Give me new material.
I
So
have to see other
I try.
comics. It's just
I need to see other comics.
Exactly. She's like, I need to, this needs to be an open comedic relationship that we're in to branch out.
So where can people follow you on the socials? And do you ever post your stuff? Do you ever post the 30-second clips or anything here? Or do you keep that? You got to come see me live, you bastards.
No, you know what? I mean, I haven't yet, but because at first I didn't I didn't think that was a thing to do, but I've been like, oh, other people do that. I guess I should do that. So yeah, I will start posting more. Lauren Caputo is funny, is my Instagram handle, and it's also my wife gave me that name. So I'm actually happy, yeah, because she was kind of like, oh, she believes in me. But yeah, so and I will start, posting more clips and things like that. I like to post things from our life a lot too, because I think it kind of like builds into the whole, understanding of what my material is about, to kind of get that glimpse under the hood. But
no, I like that.
I will send you some too, because yeah, like why am I holding it for who?
And so what so the next 90 days, what's the highlight? Where do you want to be 90 days from now? Do you have like, I want to do 30 minutes here, or I want to have a 30-minute set? What is the biggest thing on your next 90-day cycle that you kind of want to hit?
That's a great question. I am auditioning to be an MC actually in 2 weeks. So I want to start emceeing because I actually think I would like it. So that's number one. And I do want to build, because all comedians are building to an hour, right? That's our spiel. Like that's our milestone. So 30 minutes is actually the next set. I think for me, I want to get an actual headlining gig too. Like, I'm part of shows, but I haven't headlined a show yet. So I think, they kind of go hand in hand. Maybe not 30 minutes, but 20 minutes is usually, the shows I've been, the headliners you're usually doing 15, 20. So, but yeah.
No, the emceeing thing, we just had a guest on a few weeks ago. And he's a big headliner in New England. Like every Saturday or Sunday, he's headlining something, or he's hosting a big headlining show. And he got approached by a bunch of club owners that like no one wants to host. Everybody wants to be a comic. So they get a comic reluctantly being a host first. There's a different cadence and a skill set. On August 27th, I'm taking his hosting class because I also, I think that's a fun thing to do. Like,
fun.
And I don't mean I'm gonna, host and do my stuff all the way through. And it came up in a conversation when I was talking with him that there's a Boston legend named Mike Donovan. He was just on Bill Burr's show promoting his book. I got his book. And I was reading it, and it was funny because I was talking to him just naturally in the conversation, talking about, in Donovan's book, he says, hosting has become this lost art. And in the 70s and 80s, I used to get these great intros. And I had brought that up because I had just seen a show that he produced with a comedian here that I absolutely love, a headliner. And I wasn't saying, the host sucks, fire him. I was saying, hey, the host didn't do a great job. And the second guy wasn't really, the first guy was okay. The second guy kind of brought the room down. But this comedian that Joe and I really like is Steve Bjork. My whole thing was he turned the room around in 5 seconds. Yeah. And it was, but that led into that hosting discussion, and we circled back to it. And the same thing, it's like another comedian that we've had on who's great. A guy's name is Jim McHugh. He's the best crowd work guy. He has a special on Dry Bar. Well, he does cruise ships. And he says the problem with the cruise ships is every host wants to be a comic. And they sign 12-week commitments to host. And just around week 7 or 8 or 9 that they become good hosts, they're like, as soon as this contract's over, I'm only going to come back as a comic. And then the first 6 or 7 cruises he does after that, the hosts suck again. But no, it's interesting to hear that you're interested in that, because that's a different career altogether.
Yeah. And I think, because again, I think I want to get better at crowd work, period. And to your point, you have to do crowd work. Like, you have to hype up the crowd. You have to take what the other comedian just said and work it into your setup for something else. You got to bridge the two acts together. It's not just, otherwise it feels very disjointed. In fact, when I go up, every time I go up, no matter what I have, like you saw me, I always try to bring whatever somebody else just said into the first joke that I tell. So, and I think it's fun because it's like a mental gymnastics that you have to do, because you have to be on your toes. Like, you can't just sit in the laurels of your own set, if that makes sense. And it makes it fun and interesting and things like that. So I think for me, I don't know, career wise, but I do want to do it because I think it will help my what's the word, persona, presentation,
brand.
Yeah, I think it will help me grow as a comedian.
It's like one of those things. So you do a lot of swimming. If you got on the bike or the elliptical afterwards, you're working a different muscle group, but it's all under the cardio umbrella.
Exactly.
And any of these skills, whether, like we were talking earlier, if you take an improv class, even if you are a no but guy versus a yes and person.
Yeah, even if you kill the scene, you're still learning.
You're still working on something.
Yeah.
So no, that was great. We will post anywhere else but Instagram. Are you active on any of the other socials?
I am on Facebook. I have to get on the TikTok. Everybody's telling me to get on the TikTok. I'm so not good with I feel really old, but I will. I promise people I'll get on TikTok. But Facebook is usually, I'm actually I'm almost ashamed to say that, because you know who else is on Facebook? My 80-year-old father. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's the 2 platforms that I'm on right now.
Well, what came out years ago, it's like, there's this great app that lets you know which of your relatives are racist. It's Facebook.
It's Facebook. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was on Twitter forever. I was not on these things. And then, a couple years ago when Joe and I started doing this, I kind of took over the social media-ish thing. But I've just been on Instagram for a while, and it's just because I have kind of a fresh start on it, 6-7 months ago. My feed is nothing but comics. And because my little guy lives for European soccer, it's European football clips and comedians, and it's now kind of a fun place, because that's all I have on it. I don't have the toxic,
I don't know, guy. I'm on this new app called X, and it's pretty rad. You get introduced to a lot of new
ideas and religions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How ironic is that, like, the average audience or the average age of TikTok users don't know how to read a clock? It's just like, it's just like,
that's hysterical.
TikTok, it makes it's the sound a clock makes. Hey, this is not my. Yeah, I'm workshopping like some ideas.
You know what? I like that joke. I think you should lean into that.
No, you don't. I can sense. I can hear your wife yelling at me, going, I don't know.
Keep working on that. I just called it the TikTok. So actually,
well, no, that's a Southern California thing. That because back here, what are the 3 big highways in New Jersey that you take from the airport to your parents' house? Tell me what the 3 roads are.
Oh shit! Now you're gonna make me. I'm gonna sound terrible. Well, the Turnpike. Okay. So there's the White Horse Pike, the Black Horse Pike, the Atlantic City Expressway, Jersey Turnpike. Yeah.
Well, I was out here. It's 93. It's 495. But in LA, it's the 405, the 101. Okay. So the TikTok. That is just the vernacular. That's a California accent.
I'm gonna tell you that you just saved me from crying in my ice cream tonight for feeling old. So thank you. For my self-esteem boost.
Lauren, thank you so much for talking to us about this. Like I said, I mean, that night I saw you, I truly thought I would have had no idea it was your first 50 minutes. That you were hysterical. Like I said, I wish, like, if there was something online, or the next time my wife gets, because she get one of the touresses in LA every few months. I of course already follow you on the social media. Again, just clarifying, like, when you follow your wife to San Francisco, it's all consensual. But I will definitely, you are somebody that I will definitely make sure that my friends who actually put on pants and leave the house now and then to go see somebody know when you're performing, because I really like your style of comedy.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It was great talking to you guys. I had a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
And so, by the way, just to reiterate. Oh, so no, you go.
This is also my virginal podcast. You guys popped my podcast cherry too, by the way. Yeah.
Nice. And like when you first lose your virginity, it was painful and embarrassing. So it's just like,
anybody or tell anybody about it, for sure.
No, right. And if you do tell anybody about it,
no. Look, look. I've been saying it forever, and you just proved it right. You just needed 2 straight white guys to get you over the hump. So, you're welcome, I guess.
There you go. I'm sorry, you're going to show up in my next show. So there you go.
Lauren, this was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, and enjoy your Friday evening. I couldn't remember what day it was.
That's an issue I can't help you with, but it's been a blast, guys. It was great. It was great to meet you, Joe.
Nice to meet you too.
Any Italians in the audience? Yeah. Where's the Italians? Raise your hand. All right. This guy right here, he could be a serial killer. And Italians are like, that's a fucking nice Italian guy right here. He's Italian. He's a good guy. Italians love being Italians above all else. And I didn't realize this, right, until I moved out west, and my dad came out. And my dad looks like Danny DeVito's actual twin. And he was ordered. I took him out to eat, and he was ordered. He was like, yeah, I want a hoagie with some gabagool, some bruschetta, some gouda-kini, some bruschetta, some beefsteak tomatoes. And he's like, what's the matter with this guy? He doesn't understand my order. I'm like, you know what, Dad? I got this. They do things a little bit differently here on the West Coast. Ladies and gentlemen, with like a $5 footlong. Extra meat, extra cheese.